I am back with another video, a book related video. So today I'm going to be sharing the books and just everything that I read that I loved over the summer. And so this is going to be from May to August. I know technically a lot of people say May is part of spring, but for me, May has always been a part of summer because where I lived, it was already the temperature of hell by the first week of May. So that's what we're gonna be doing. So yeah, I read a total of 20 and I'm going to be talking about 9 of them, which were my favorites. Now favorites, I don't mean like I gave them 5 stars or anything like that. Favorites are just like my favorites. Like some of these I didn't technically give 5 stars. Don't focus on the star rating. These are just personally the books that I adored and loved, their flaws and their perfections all together. And first we're going to start off in the month of May. I read one book that I really liked, and that is Pachinko by Minjin Lee. It always like is weird to me to read Korean names with the romanization alphabet. Like it's so much easier, like if you can read Korean, it's so much easier to pronounce Korean names in Hangul. But like Lee Minjin, yeah. Pachinko. This is a historical fiction. This follows a Korean family through multiple generations living during the time of Japanese colonization. I am usually not a historical fiction fan. Like I really love history, but if I want to read history, I usually read nonfiction. But this has been on my radar for years now and I've heard so many good things about it, and I just wanted to read something different about something that I was kind of aware of, but I was also ignorant in many other aspects. I decided to pick this up because I wanted to learn more about what it was really like and like what the hardships Korea and its people had to overcome and go through during Japanese rule. And this is also really interesting in that you get a different perspective during World War II. So this part of this book takes place during the years of World War II, and usually most Western people, like we only focus on the West side and how World War II affected the West. And so this, you get to see kind of how a Korean family is surviving in Korea, but also in Japan. It takes place in both countries. Also, a lot of stories, they mainly focus on the division between North and South Korea. A lot of people know about that because that's what's currently going on. But it's good to see kind of the events that happened before the division. This is also still relevant to this day because there are still tensions between Japan and South Korea, and there are still obstacles and harsh feelings between the two countries' governments, but also their people. There's still some prejudice going around. So this is a really good book. I highly recommend it. If you like historical fiction, if you're looking for something that it focuses on like the family relationships, if you're curious about learning about things that happened during World War II that weren't necessarily in our textbooks in history class in the West. Okay, so that is the only favorite from May. Moving on to June, I picked up Circe by Madeline Miller. Circe? So I picked this up, and this has been on my TBR like Pachinko for a while, I think since it came out. I remember when it came out, it had really good reviews, had quite a bit of hype around it, but I just hadn't gotten around to actually reading it until I saw this book when I was in Ireland. The cover spoke to me. I love shininess. This is a Greek mythology retelling, and instead of focusing on the stereotypical, I shouldn't say stereotypical, but like the typical Greek myths and figures like the Olympians, this mainly focuses on Circe, who is a Titan's daughter, and she's the daughter of the sun titan Helios, and she kind of has this ugly duckling vibe to her. You meet her and she just really wants to impress her father. The outcast, she's not really treated well, and then she discovers that she has an affiliation with witchcraft, and some things occur, some stuff goes down, and she ends up getting banished to live on an island for the rest of her immortal life, alone, because the Olympians feel threatened by her affiliation with witchcraft. So yeah, that's the premise of the story. So this was really interesting to read about Titans instead of the normal Olympian mythologies. I knew nothing really about Titans in Greek mythology. I wasn't really sure what I was going to get into when reading this, but it was super interesting to read the story and the myths surrounding a character that's not as well known in Greek mythology. You're following her story, but throughout it, you also have all these other myths and all these other well-known and not so well-known figures from Greek mythology interwoven in her story through encounters, and also just through word of mouth, and things that she hears what's going on. And also it was interesting to read about witchcraft. There's a lot of herbs and nature and natural kind of things going on. This is quite dark, and there are some triggering events that happen in here, as Greek mythology is quite gruesome. But there's also a lot of feminist remarks in here, so really appreciated that, and I loved this. So I would highly recommend to anybody who's into Greek mythology or into any kind of mythology and they want to learn more about a not so well-known character. This doesn't have a lot of action though, so if you're looking for something that's very action-based, I'm not entirely sure I would recommend this. After reading Circe, I actually read another book which is also on my favorites, and that is Burial Rites by Hannah Kent. This is another historical fiction. Like, I don't know what was going on with me this summer, but I was into historical fiction. This takes place in Iceland during 1800s. It says 1829. So this was quite a while ago. Iceland is one of those popular countries right now, and I definitely want to go because the nature there looks spectacular and so breathtaking. But that's besides the point. This takes place in Iceland. It's not a very happy or bubbly or sunshine and rainbows kind of thing. It's about this woman named Agnes who is convicted of murdering her lover, and she is put on death row. She is forced to live with a farming family, and she's also forced to interact and meet with a priest, a Christian priest, who is supposed to kind of like make her admit her sins so that she can die with respect or something. You know, there's a lot of Christianity and religion interwoven into the story. It's not about, oh, seeing what happens at the end, because basically from the beginning you know what's gonna happen at the end. It's more about the journey, and like you get to meet Agnes and you're told on the back that she's a killer, but only she knows the truth of what really happened. And so you kind of, as you get to know more about her, you kind of question, okay, did she really kill this guy, or like what really happened, and why, what events led up to the murder. And so that's kind of more, it's, you read it more for the journey of figuring out why things happened rather than just trying to figure out what happened at the end. And the book does flip between past and present events. So you get to see the past mainly from Agnes's, I think all from Agnes's view. That's how you kind of understand what really happened. But you also get to see the present and how her past has affected her in present day life. Agnes, the main protagonist, or whatever you want to call her, she's not a hero. She's not really, I don't even know if you would call her a protagonist, just because she's a normal woman that was living during the 1800s in Iceland and just wanting to survive. And she's not outspoken, she's not brave, she's not heroic, but her story is fascinating nonetheless. This story really focuses on the complexity of humanity in our thoughts, our emotions, and our desires. Immediately after finishing this, I started Googling, and it seems like there's actually a lot of polarizing views on Agnes. There are some people who thought Agnes was just an innocent woman who was manipulated, and then other people think she was a witch, she was evil. So yeah, that's why I recommend it. The next books are all from July, and Reading Rush happened in July, which I did a TBR and a vlog over. So the books that I'm about to talk about are, I'm pretty sure all of them are from the Reading Rush. So I'm not going to go into too much detail with them, but the first one I'm going to talk about is Dear Ijeawele, or a Manifesto, or a I don't know how many times I've tried to pronounce everything in this correctly, but I have failed every time. Dear Ijeawele, or a Feminist Manifesto and 15 Suggestions by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This is a short little story about how to introduce a feminist outlook on life to children or to young people, and how to make them understand that everybody is equal, but at the same time everybody is an individual, and so we all have our differences, but we're all still equal. Really liked it. Highly recommend anybody to pick this up if you're interested in learning more about feminism. It's a very simple read, it's a very short read, so yeah, I recommend any of her writings, although I've only read 2 still. And then the next thing I'm going to talk about, again, I talked about in my Reading Rush vlog, but it's Nocturnal by Wilder, which is a poetry collection. The aesthetics of this poetry collection are just freaking beautiful. The cover is like a galaxy, and the colors and the illustrations in this are just so beautiful. It's taken me a while to actually get into poetry collections. I really prefer poems that rhyme, and not all of the poems in here have a rhyme scheme in them, but a lot of the ones that I tabbed do, and I just really liked it. The next thing I'm going to talk about, I read one of these during Reading Rush, and then I read the other after Reading Rush, and that is The Cruel Prince and the Wicked King by Holly Black. This is a YA fantasy. Not gonna lie, this has probably become my favorite YA fantasy series, which is saying a lot because I've read a lot. Fae have never been my thing. I've just been like, nah, I'm not into them. I've tried to read some of them, but I just get so bored and so tired of reading about how perfect they are, about how powerful they are, about how beautiful they are, and I'm just like, nah, they're not interesting enough. But the ones in here, the Fae in here, are all of those things, but they're also more connected to like the original Celtic tales of fairies. They're all of those things. They're like powerful, they're unnaturally quite beautiful, but they're also super cruel. They're moody. They have these animalistic aspects to them, to both their personality but also to their appearance, and they're just like whimsical tricksters, and it's just so entertaining. So The Cruel Prince follows a character named Jude, and so this is all about like Jude wanting to try to fit in to this world that she was forced to grow up in. In the beginning of this, she wants to become a knight for the High Court of Fairy. Fairy is like the land that it's called. Even though humans do live in this land, they're kind of seen as the lower class, like they're weak, they're ugly, they're just like little ants to the Fae, and she has already made an enemy out of the youngest prince of the High Court named Carden? Fantasy names, man. Fantasy names. Carden, and he is known as the douche of the story in the beginning, so that's fun. So while I was reading both of these, there were multiple times where I just wanted to, like, you know, you get that feeling when you just want to jump into the story and like smack some sense into some of these characters, or like stick up for some of the characters you fall in love with, and you just like want to protect them, like, because that was happening to me while throughout reading this. I was just like, I wanna jump in here and think that I can slap some of these characters, when in reality, if I actually did have that capability, I would probably get killed the instant I tried to hit them, but whatever. Violence is not good, kids. I do not recommend violence, but when it's against fictional characters and you can't actually enact violence, it is a refreshing feeling. I'm not entirely sure if that makes sense, but yeah. These books have a lot of twists and turns, which I'm all here for. Like, I love a good story that doesn't end up going where you think it's going. Like, some of the things I could see coming, but at the same time, they were done so well that I liked it still. Like, it wasn't surprising to me, but it was still super entertaining. Really like that. And there were also some things that I just didn't see coming. Fair warning, if you have not started this series, but you are interested in starting this series, The Wicked King ends horribly. And I mean that in that the cliffhanger in this it's just tough, man. It is tough after finishing this and not being able to read immediately what happens at the end, because I think this is a trilogy. Pretty sure it's a trilogy. But yeah, the third book comes out in November. So what I recommend is to get the books, but don't start reading until like the end of October, because you will die after reading The Wicked King. Just saying. Just trying to be nice here and like save you from the torment of waiting. I didn't really read a lot in August. Did read a few things, and I do have a few favorites, and they are webtoons. Webtoons are basically like web comics, like internet comics. I read mine on an app, a free app called Webtoons. Highly recommend to download it if you're interested in reading anything. Got really into last month. It's called Lore Olympus, and from the title, it's about Greek mythology, but it's a really interesting take on Greek mythology. There are about 70 plus chapters of it. It is updated every Saturday. So with Webtoons, they have like a specific time and day that they update every week, but usually every week they update. But yeah, it follows multiple Greek mythology gods and goddesses, mainly focuses on Persephone and Hades. And it's got a bunch of drama. It's got some really funny parts. Like the dialogue in here is just grand. And it's set in like this urban fantasy setting. Hades works in a skyscraper and there are cars. It just seems kind of futuristic, but it's like all Greek mythology characters and creatures, which is really interesting. But the art is spectacular and it's very unique because like every character has a different shade of color they are drawn in, and it's just really eye-catching and just like super appealing to read. You begin to associate colors with characters, which is just really cool. But anyways, also the comment section for all webtoons after each chapter they're like gold. Like I highly recommend, like one of the reasons why I love reading webtoons is just to read the comments that people have put. That is it. If you have read any of these things, let me know what you thought of them. Yeah, that's about it. I will see you in my next video. Don't know what I'm doing, but okay.